I almost didn't go to the bank that morning. My knee had been acting up again, the left one, the one I hurt back in '89 playing pickup basketball at the Re-Center in Columbus. 63 years old, and that knee still reminds me every cold morning that I'm not 25 anymore. I was sitting at the kitchen table with my coffee, watching the frost on the backyard fence, thinking maybe I'd just call and reschedule. But my daughter had called me the night before, twice. "Dad, just come in Thursday morning. The notary is already scheduled. It'll take 20 minutes, I promise." Her name is Simone. She's 41, lives about 12 minutes from me in a nice subdivision out near Westerville. Married a man named Patrick 8 years ago. Patrick, with his firm handshakes and his fantasy football league and his way of never quite looking me in the eyes when we talked about money. I finished my coffee, I took my blood pressure pill, I got in the car. The bank was a First Federal branch on Morse Road, one I'd been using for going on 19 years. I knew the branch manager by first name, a woman named Claudette, who always remembered to ask about my tomato garden. The trust documents had been sitting in a safe deposit box there for 3 years, ever since my wife passed. My wife's name was Patricia. She was the one who set up the living trust in the first place. She was always smarter about those things than I was. Patricia used to say, "Bernard, you are good at earning it and terrible at protecting it." She wasn't wrong. The trust had the house, the investment account, and a piece of commercial property in Gahanna that I'd owned since 2006. Together it was worth a little over $800,000. Nothing generational wealth about it, just a man who worked 31 years in logistics management and didn't spend what he didn't have. When Patricia died, pancreatic cancer, 14 months from diagnosis to gone, she left everything to me with the instruction that it would pass equally to our 2 children when I was gone. Simone and our son Darnell, who lives in Atlanta. 3 weeks before that Thursday morning, Simone had called me with an idea. "Dad, Patrick and I found this financial advisor. He says if we restructure the trust now, while you're still healthy, it could save the estate a lot in taxes when the time comes." I didn't love the idea, but I didn't hate it either. She explained it a few times. Something about a revocable trust amendment that would consolidate the assets under a family LLC. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a financial planner. I'm a man who spent 3 decades moving freight and trying to do right by his family. I asked her to send me the paperwork. She sent 12 pages. I read about 4 of them before my eyes started sliding off the page. The language was dense, the way legal language always is, full of whereas and notwithstanding and phrases that curl back on themselves. I called Darnell and read him a few sections over the phone. Darnell was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Dad, did you talk to your own lawyer about this?" I hadn't. I told him I'd look into it. Somehow I never did. The weeks moved. My knee hurt. I watched the Buckeyes lose a game they should have won. And then it was Wednesday night, and Simone was calling me twice to confirm Thursday morning. The drive to the bank took 9 minutes. Simone was already there when I walked in, standing near the front with her coat still on and her phone in her hand. She hugged me the way she always does. One arm quick, the kind of hug you give someone when you're thinking about something else. Patrick wasn't with her. She said he had a work thing. Claudette, the branch manager, came out to say hello. She asked about my tomatoes. I told her I was thinking about trying heirloom varieties this spring. She laughed and led us back toward the conference room where the notary was waiting. That's when it happened. I had just stepped away from Simone for a moment. She'd stopped to check something on her phone, and I was walking past the row of teller windows when one of the tellers leaned slightly forward and said, quietly, barely above a whisper, "Mr. Bernard." I stopped. She was a young woman, couldn't have been more than 27 or 28. I didn't recognize her. Her name tag said Keisha. She had her hands flat on the counter and she was looking directly at me with an expression I can only describe as careful, like someone choosing every word before saying it. "I need you to do something for me," she said, "and I need you to not react." I almost laughed. I thought she'd mixed me up with someone else. "Don't look toward the conference room," she said. "Just stay right here for a second and look at me like we're talking about your account." Something in her voice made me do exactly what she said. "I've been trying to figure out if I should say something for 3 days," she said. "I could lose my job for this, but I can't just watch it happen." My heart started doing something I didn't like. I kept my face still. "The account amendment that's being filed today," she said. "It's not what you think it is. I didn't say anything. It's not a tax restructure." She paused. She glanced once toward the back of the bank, then back at me. "It removes you as the primary trustee and transfers authorization to your daughter as sole controlling trustee, effective immediately upon signing. The language about the LLC, that's real, but the LLC is already formed. It was filed in Delaware 6 weeks ago. You're not listed as a member." I heard what she said. I understood every word, but for a moment, my brain just refused to connect them into a meaning. "Mr. Bernard," her voice was gentle, "if you sign those papers today, you will no longer have legal control over your own assets. Your house, your investment account, the property on Morse, all of it moves under your daughter's authority. Not shared authority, sole authority. The frost on the bank windows. The hum of the HVAC fall. Simone somewhere behind me checking her phone. "How do you know this?" I asked. I kept my voice low. "Her husband came in 2 weeks ago," she said. "He spoke with one of our senior advisors. I wasn't in that meeting, but I heard things afterward. I looked at the documents when they came through for processing. I've been in this branch for 4 years. I know what a standard trust amendment looks like, and I know what this is." I put my hand on the counter. Not because I needed to hold myself up, exactly, but because I needed to feel something solid. "Is there a restroom I can use before we go back?" I said, loudly enough that a passing colleague of hers could hear. She nodded. "Right down that hallway, sir. Second door on the left." I went down the hallway. I did not go to the restroom. I stood in the little alcove by the safe deposit room, and I took out my phone and I called Darnell. He picked up on the second ring. I told him in a low voice what the teller had just told me. He went quiet in that way. He has. Darnell thinks before he speaks, always has, even as a little boy. Patricia used to say he got that from her side. "Dad," he finally said, "don't sign anything." "I know. Can you stall?" I thought about Simone in her coat with her phone. The notary waiting. The documents already laid out on the conference table, probably. Corners neat. Signature lines flagged with those little yellow sticky arrows. "I can try," I said. "I'm calling Marcus," Darnell said. Marcus is his college friend who went to law school, practices estate law in Columbus. "I'm calling him right now. Give me 15 minutes. I splashed some water on my face in the restroom. I looked at myself in the mirror. 63 years old, bad left knee, 19-year customer at this bank. Everything I'd built in 31 years sitting in a file folder on a conference table 12 feet away. I walked back out. Simone was still on her phone. She smiled when she saw me and said, "Ready? I think the notary has another appointment at 11. "My stomach's bothering me a little," I said. "I'm sorry. Give me a few more minutes." She looked at me. Just for a half second, the way a person's face changes when a plan runs into an obstacle. It was quick. She covered it fast with concern. "Are you okay, Dad? Do you need some water?" "I'll be fine," I said. "Just need to sit for a minute." She got me water. I sat in one of the lobby chairs. I watched her go back toward the conference room, probably to let the notary know. I kept my phone face down on my knee. 8 minutes later, it buzzed. It was Darnell. He'd reached Marcus. Marcus had already pulled the Delaware LLC filing while Darnell had me on hold. It takes about 90 seconds if you know where to look. The LLC was called Ashford Family Holdings LLC. Simone's married name is Ashford. Listed as sole member and managing officer, Simone Ashford. Patrick Ashford listed as co-manager. I was not listed anywhere. Marcus told Darnell to tell me 3 things. Do not sign. Do not leave the bank until I'd spoken to him directly. And do not let on that I knew what was in the documents. That last one was the hardest. I sat in that lobby chair for another 4 minutes while Darnell transferred the call to Marcus. Marcus has a calm voice. I don't know how lawyers do that. Maintain that even steady register when they're talking about something that should make a person's hands shake. He explained to me what I was looking at. The amendment, if signed, was technically legal because it was a voluntary revocation of my trustee status. I would be signing away my own authority, the language buried on page 9. Page 9, which I had never gotten to, specified that the transition of trustee status was irrevocable upon execution. Once you sign it, Marcus said, you cannot undo it without litigation. And litigation against a child over a trust amendment you voluntarily signed is expensive and ugly and not guaranteed. How did this happen? I asked. He paused. Someone put this together with help. This isn't a DIY job. There's a real attorney on the other side of this. Whoever drafted this knew exactly what they were doing. I thanked him. He told me to call him when I got home. I stood up. My knee hurt. My chest hurt more. Simone came back out from the hallway. Dad, we really should get started. I'm not going to sign today, I said. The lobby was not quiet. There was keyboard noise, phone noise, a TV mounted on the wall showing a morning news program with the sound off. But in the space between me and my daughter, it was absolutely silent. Her face went through 4 or 5 things very quickly. Concern, confusion, calculation, then something that settled into a careful, practiced version of gentle frustration. Dad, we've been planning this for weeks. The notary is waiting. This is literally just paperwork. I want my own attorney to look at it first, I said. You have an attorney. The trust was set up by an attorney. I want my own attorney to look at this amendment, I said. Today's not the day. She took a breath. Dad, the tax advantages. Simone. I said her name quietly. We were standing in the lobby of a bank where I'd kept my money for 19 years, and I was looking at my daughter's face, and I was trying to find in it the girl who used to fall asleep on the couch while I watched baseball. I'm not signing today. I'll be in touch. I picked up my jacket from the chair. I nodded to Keisha as I passed the teller windows. She didn't look up. She was typing something. But I saw the smallest exhale leave her body, like she'd been holding her breath for 3 days and had finally been allowed to let it go. I sat in my car in the parking lot for a while before I drove anywhere. I called Darnell back. I told him what happened. He was quiet again for a moment, and then he said, "How are you feeling?" That's a question that has a lot of answers. I felt like someone had reached into my chest and moved something around, not removed it, just moved it into a slightly different position, and now everything felt off-center. I kept thinking about small things. Simone calling twice the night before. Patrick and his firm handshakes. The way she'd looked at me when I said my stomach was bothering me. That half-second calculation. I thought about how she'd suggested the trust amendment, and how patient she'd been explaining it, and how she'd sent me 12 pages, knowing I'd probably only read 4. I thought about Patricia. Patricia would have read all 12 pages. Patricia would have called 3 different people before she ever agreed to a meeting. Patricia used to keep a yellow legal pad next to her chair and write down questions as they occurred to her. And she'd bring that pad to every appointment, every meeting, every important conversation. I still have one of those pads. It's in the kitchen drawer, mostly empty. I can't bring myself to throw it out. I sat in the parking lot and missed her in a way that had a specific shape to it. Then I drove home. What followed the next few weeks was not dramatic. There were no confrontations, no big scenes at the dinner table. Real life doesn't usually arrange itself that way. What happened was quieter and, in some ways, harder. Darnell flew up from Atlanta. He and Marcus met with me at my kitchen table, and we went through everything. Marcus had done some additional digging. The Delaware LLC had been formed 6 weeks before that morning at the bank, just as Keisha had said. Patrick had been the one who found the attorney who drafted the amendment, a firm in Dublin, Ohio that specializes in business law, not estate planning, which Marcus said was telling. The document had been drafted to look like an estate planning instrument while actually functioning as a business transfer. The question, Marcus said, setting down his coffee cup, is what you want to do about it. I looked at Darnell. Darnell looked at the table. Do I have to do anything? I said. Marcus said no. The simplest path was to do nothing. Don't sign, don't amend. Let the existing trust stand as Patricia set it up. If I wanted, I could update the trust myself, with my own attorney to add certain protections. I could also, Marcus said carefully, revisit the distribution percentages. I thought about that for a long time. I thought about Simone at 8 years old, refusing to let me carry her backpack because she could do it herself. I thought about her college graduation, how she'd cried in a way I'd never seen her cry, and how she'd held on to Patricia for a long time. I thought about the first time Patrick came to Thanksgiving and how something in me had felt slightly off that I'd chosen to ignore, Because Simone was happy and I didn't want to be the father who couldn't let his daughter be happy. I thought about how there is a difference between who someone was and who they became, and how those two people can exist in the same body at the same time, looking at you with familiar eyes. I did revise the trust. I worked with a different attorney, my own, someone Darnell helped me find. The commercial property in Guyana is now in a separate trust. The investment account has a co-trustee requirement, meaning no single person can make major changes without sign-off from a designated third party. Darnell volunteered for that role. I made him promise to never let the responsibility make things weird between him and his sister. He said, "Dad, things are already weird." I said, "Weirder then." He laughed. It was a small laugh, the kind that lives right next to something sad. I did not confront Simone. I've thought about whether that was the right choice. Maybe I should have. Maybe she deserved to look me in the eyes and hear me say, "I know what you tried to do." Maybe I deserved to hear her explanation, whatever it would have been. But I am 63 years old. I have a bad left knee and a blood pressure that I manage with medication and a tomato garden that I am very much looking forward to this spring. I have limited time and limited energy, and I have learned slowly, too slowly, Patricia would say, that not every fire needs to be walked into directly to be put out. What I did instead was simpler. I called Simone and told her that I'd decided not to move forward with the trust amendment. I told her I'd spoken to my own attorney and made some updates to the existing documents. I told her that everything was in order and she didn't need to worry. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "I just wanted to help, Dad." I said, "I know. I don't know if that's true. I don't know if she believes it herself. There is a part of love that can survive almost anything, and there is a part of it that changes shape when it gets broken and never quite fits back the same way. I'm still figuring out which part is which. What I do know is this. I had a wife who spent 26 years of her life building something with me, who kept yellow legal pads and asked all the right questions and trusted me with the things that mattered. She is gone, and the world I'm living in now is not the world I expected to be living in at this age. It is lonelier and stranger and more dangerous in ways I didn't anticipate. But I am still here. I'm still here, and the house is still mine, and in about 6 weeks I am going to plant heirloom tomatoes along the back fence and see what happens. I went back to the bank about 2 weeks after everything settled. I asked to speak with Keisha. The branch manager, Claudette, came out and said that Keisha had transferred to another branch. She said it quietly in a way that told me there might be more to that story. I thanked her and didn't push. I don't know what it cost that young woman to lean across that counter and say what she said. I think about it more than I'd expect to. She didn't know me. She owed me nothing. She had a job to protect and a reason to stay quiet, and she chose not to. There are people in this world who will watch something wrong happen and say nothing because it isn't their problem. And then there are people like Keisha, whoever she is, wherever she ended up. People who lean forward and keep their voice low and say, "I need you to not react. I've been trying to figure out whether to say something for 3 days. I hope she is okay. I hope the next branch she landed in has good people and a manager who doesn't ask too many questions about why she left. I hope the work she did that morning, the quiet, unremarkable, everything work of just telling the truth to a stranger, I hope it comes back to her somehow. That's all I got. That's the whole story. What I'll tell you, if you're listening and you have children and you have things you've built, and people you trust with those things, pay attention to the small moments, not the big speeches, not the obvious red flags that everybody warns you about. Pay attention to the calls that come twice in the same evening. Pay attention to the paperwork that's too long to read all the way through. Pay attention to the handshake that's a little too firm, the meeting that's a little too scheduled, the patience that feels like it has an agenda behind it. Patricia used to say that love doesn't manage you. It doesn't organize you or restructure you or file you into a Delaware LLC without your name on the documents. Love, real love, the kind that lasts, just stands next to you and tells you the truth and lets you hold your own keys. She was right about that. She was right about most things. I miss her every day. I've thought a lot about what causes a thing like this to happen. Not in a bitter way. Bitterness is a weight I can't afford at 63 with a bad knee and a garden to plant. But I think about it the way you think about a storm after it passes, trying to understand where it came from, trying to figure out what you missed. The truth is, I didn't miss the signs. I chose not to look at them. Patrick's handshakes that were always just a little too deliberate. Simone's patience about the amendment, the kind of patience that has a deadline attached to it. The 12 pages she sent me knowing I'd only read 4. These weren't invisible things. They were quiet things. And quiet things require a person to be still enough to hear them. I wasn't still. I was grieving and busy and tired, and I told myself that love meant giving people the benefit of the doubt. But here's what I know now. There is a difference between trust and willful blindness. Trust is something you extend to a person based on who they've shown you they are. Willful blindness is what happens when you already know the answer and you keep asking the question anyway because you don't want to deal with what's true. I was willfully blind. That's on me. What saved me wasn't luck. It was Keisha, a young woman who chose character over convenience. She could have stayed quiet. She had every practical reason to. Instead, she leaned across that counter and said something that cost her, and she said it anyway. That kind of integrity doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from a person who has decided at some point in their life that they would rather live with the discomfort of doing the right thing than with the ease of doing nothing. I want to be more like Keisha. At 63, I'm still learning what that looks like. What I've come to understand is that the people who truly love you do not manage you. They do not organize your assets without your knowledge or file LLCs with your name absent from the documents. They do not call twice the night before and schedule notaries and send paperwork they expect you not to finish reading. Real care, the kind Patricia showed me for 26 years, is transparent. It moves slowly. It says, here is what I'm thinking. What do you think? It keeps your name on things. Darnell called me the other night just to talk. No agenda. He asked how the knee was. He asked about the tomatoes. We talked for 40 minutes about nothing important and everything that mattered. That's what love looks like when it isn't trying to get something from you. I'm not going to pretend I've made peace with all of it. Some mornings I pour my coffee and sit at the kitchen table and feel the shape of what almost happened, and it still moves something around in my chest. I think that's okay. You're allowed to grieve the version of your child you thought you knew. You're allowed to carry the weight of it without letting it crush you. What I won't do is stop building. I won't stop tending the things I've worked for. I won't hand my keys to someone who hasn't earned them, not out of bitterness, but out of hard-won wisdom. Patricia taught me to earn it carefully. Life taught me to protect it the same way. The tomatoes go in the ground in 6 weeks. I'll be out there in the morning when it's still cool, with my bad knee and my coffee and my yellow legal pad, writing down what I need to remember. That's enough. That's plenty.